Hello everybody, it's Ben here, back again today doing another video. And the subject of today's video is going to be the last in the Rise and Fall series, for now at least. This has been a pretty long series, it's 20 plus videos at this point. If you haven't seen any of the others, go check them out on the channel, I have a playlist for them. Really the point of the series, if you haven't seen it before, is just to review uh, a historical NBA contender's rise to contention, their plateau, and then why they eventually started falling off. So today we're going to be looking at the rise and fall of the 2010s Memphis Grizzlies that were really called the grit and grind era. Just as a quick summary, top left you'll see team's record, their playoff seed, their playoff result, their offense and defensive rating. Bottom left, individual regular season stats. Bottom right, playoff individual stats. Um, so if we look at this first year for Memphis, they had a pretty solid core, and as you can see on screen, that's their starting five: Conley, Gasol, Randolph, Rudy Gay, and OJ Mayo, and pretty balanced scoring as well. Randolph and Rudy Gay each scoring about 20 a game. Conley putting up 14, and Gasol and Mayo putting up 12 and 11 respectively. Um, they had a late acquisition at the trade deadline of Shane Battier that was a good presence off the bench as well. And this was one of the first, I believe, the first year Tony Allen was on the team, and he was a really good bench defender. As you can see, their defensive rating being ninth, they were a really solid defensive team. Offensively, Randolph was really solid, and Gay was pretty good too. But outside of that, they didn't have anybody that you'd really categorize as like spectacular offensively. OJ Mayo was pretty promising the year before in his rookie year, but he had kind of come down to earth by this point, with the addition of Randolph in the lineup, taking a lot of shots away from him. In the playoffs, they upset the one-seeded Spurs in the first round and then pushed Oklahoma City to 7 games in the second round. But to me, what really impeded this team was um, twofold. Number one, they just didn't have as much firepower as they needed to keep up with OKC. And then number two, two of their guys who were taking quite a few shots a game, Mayo and Conley, collectively were shooting under 39% from the field for the playoffs. So that lack of efficiency really hurt them quite a bit. Going into the next season, you basically had the same exact core coming back. You know, Gay, Gasol, Conley, Mayo, Tony Allen, Zach Randolph. The only difference was um, they didn't have Shane Battier this season because he had left. I believe he had gone to Miami in free agency, but the rest of the team's still intact. If they would have had a regular season, they would have finished with 51 wins because this was a lockout shortened year. They were the 4 seed and lost to OKC in the first round. As far as their offense and defensive rating, basically the same team. They got a few slots worse as far as offensive rating, but a few slots better as far as defensive rating, but relatively the same. Um, as far as Gasol, Conley, and Mayo, you basically had them put up the same exact stats as the year before. Rudy Gay, same thing, except a bit less efficient. And Zach Randolph, he missed nearly all of this season, playing less than 30 games, and he just had a bit of an off season overall, averaging under 12 points a game. And come the playoffs, he was back, but still wasn't 100%. And this was kind of a weird series and really a close series, and I believe there were a lot of games where Memphis actually had solid leads, and the Clippers made random, like really big comebacks to defeat them. But overall, they're still a solid team, and people saw them as like around a second round exit most years, I would say. And they just kind of got a raw deal in that they had Randolph missed a lot of games this year, so their seeding was a bit lower than they probably would have been otherwise. The next year is what a lot of people consider the peak of this team. Um, this was the cover of one of Slam magazines at the start of the season. This year, they actually ended up trading away Rudy Gay about halfway through the year, mainly because his contract was going to be expiring soon, and they didn't want to pay him a huge max extension or anything, which he was looking for. He was also pretty inefficient, shooting under 41% from the field this year, but being their top shot taker. So they thought, we can do fine without him. So they sent him away to Toronto. Really, Tayshaun Prince stepped up and started in his place just as a good wing defender. You'll see that their offense was still middling, but their defense was up to second in the league. And come the playoffs, they played good, but a lot of why they got to the Western Conference Finals was because OKC lost in the or OKC was without Russell Westbrook in the playoff series against Memphis, so they were able to beat the Thunder who were without Westbrook. Um, Again, if you want to look at the Western Conference Finals and why they struggled a bit, guys who were playing big minutes like Tayshaun Prince and Mike Conley were shooting really bad from the field, 38% and 35% collectively. Something else I want to make note of is that OJ Mayo left as a free agent for this season, so two of their top shot creators in Rudy Gay and OJ Mayo were off the team come the playoffs, and a lot of people say that this team was better off without them, but I do think offensively they took a pretty big hit not having those two guys. Going into the next year, they were looking to build on a Western Conference Finals appearance, but they had some injury issues this year. I look at number one, Tony Allen missed 27 games. Marc Gasol missed 23 games. Courtney Lee, who was supposed to come in and be like a starting shooting guard or at least a six man, he missed nearly 40 games. Basically a copy and paste of the team from the year before, just with some injury issues, so they were a bit of a lower seed, and they lost to a fully healthy OKC in the first round. And as I had made note, without Rudy Gay or OJ Mayo, this team struggled more offensively. As you can see this year, they were 27th in offense, even though they were third in defense. And Conley and Gasol missing significant time hurt them offensively as well. And in the playoffs, everybody everybody played fine, but they were just outgunned by OKC offensively. Going into next year, 14 to 15, I think that this was actually the best year of this team, where they were the best overall team. I look at them, and the major addition was that they brought in Jeff Green at the trade deadline, or a little bit before the trade deadline, to play for them. Um, and he was a pretty solid contributor, 13 points a game, could provide some spacing. Gasol was fully healthy. Randolph and Conley and Courtney Lee, and they were all healthy. And Tony Allen still missed about 20 games, but was still healthier than the year before. They also brought in a good supporting bench piece in Vince Carter. And so their scoring was the most balanced, and this is actually, I believe, the highest offensively rated this team ever was during this era, while still being the third rated defense. So I think that they played really well. In the second round, they lost to Golden State in 6 games, but they actually had a shot of winning this series, and people often forget that. And a big part was that I believe Mike Conley missed like the 3 games in the series, I believe, all of which Golden State won. So, if you take out those games, Memphis was like 2-1 versus Golden State. So it's really hard to know how the series would have played out if Mike Conley would have been healthy those 3 games. But everybody played pretty solid, but Gasol was inefficient. So was Jeff Green. Those two hurt them offensively. But with Conley in the lineup, who knows what could have happened. But this is probably the most balanced and all around deepest Memphis team of this era. Going into the next year was really the same exact core, except the difference was that they had a lot of big injury problems. Gasol missed about 30 games, same with Conley. Randolph missed like 15 games. Both Jeff Green and Courtney Lee, both starters, missed 30 games each. Tony Allen missed close to 20 games. So basically, their lineup was never really constantly all together and healthy, as different guys were constantly missing different amounts of time. Because of that, their offense and defense both took big steps back. Still, when everybody was healthy, which was rare, they were still a solid team, but just they had so many different lineups because really nobody was consistently healthy throughout the entire year besides like seventh man Matt Barnes. So from that perspective, they struggled quite a bit. And then come the playoffs, I believe both Gasol and Conley and Jeff Green were all out for the playoffs. So their leading scorer was, Lance Stevenson, who they had signed right before the playoffs, averaging 13 points per game, so that was pretty bad. And then Randolph, averaging 13 points per game on terrible shooting. And then they had to rely on guys to play big minutes, like Jordan Farmar, who they signed right before the playoffs, and Matt Barnes, who is not to be an offensive weapon usually. Going into the next year, by this point, Jeff Green had left in free agency, and they had brought in Chandler Parsons to be their big free agent addition. You'll see up top in street clothes, that's Chandler Parsons. He only played 34 games for the team this year. Besides that, they had most of their other guys healthy, like Gasol, Tony Allen, Conley, and Randolph. But just there was just something gone in that. Gasol and Randolph were each getting a bit older. Tony Allen, same thing. Vince Carter, who was pretty much past his prime at this point, was being asked to play much more significant minutes. The defense was again better, and they got further in the playoffs in that they pushed the Spurs to 6 games, but still, they just didn't have enough offensive firepower, and it was really the offense was reliant on Gasol and Conley and a supporting piece by Randolph, and that was really it for this team offensively. Even when Parsons did play, he averaged 6 points per game, which was awful, and he was supposed to be like the new guy coming in, averaging like 18 points a game for them. So overall, if I had to sum up why the Grizzlies rose, it was because they had a really solid team defensively, and offensively they were good enough to be able to contend. Why they plateaued, I believe, is because the West is just really tough, and they came up against a lot of really tough competition. They also had some inopportune injuries, like Mike Conley missing 3 games that were critical against Golden State in 2015, and they lost big free agents that they maybe should have considered trying to keep, like OJ Mayo and Rudy Gay. And then why they ultimately started falling apart is just because the core of Randolph and Gasol started to age out a bit, and then also they had a lot of injuries in the last couple of seasons that hurt their contention. So there you go, guys. That's the last video in the Rise and Fall series. If you are interested in the others, please check out the playlists. I hope you guys enjoyed the series. It has spanned now, honestly, about 2 to 3 months of me periodically posting these videos in the series. So if you want to go back and review some of the other videos, feel free to do so. That's all I got for today. Hope you have a good day. See you next time. Bye.